Okay, this week we pick up with Shemot, also known as Exodus chapter 30, verse 11. Something different happens here. We'll talk about it in a minute. In English, it would just literally say, and he spoke, Yahweh, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying. So it's Vayeh Daber. Your word here is Daber. That's the speaking and the talking and all that stuff. So it starts off with the Vav, which is the and. Then they add the Yod, which makes it masculine. So we would literally say, and he spoke. And you have the word Daber. But this is the word for setting in a row, ranging in order, to lead, to guide. It's also used of leading flocks and herds to a pasture. It's to rule, to direct a people, because it's of the idea of the words that direct your life, direct your path. You know, these are very specific words. They're not just coming off the top of somebody's head. They're put together in a very specific way. So then who's saying that? Of course, then it uses the proper name of God, Yahweh. And then it says El, which is the word too. And this is the word that they say it's a noun indicative of motion. I'll say it again. There's no such thing as a noun in Hebrew. There's no such thing as a verb in Hebrew. Nouns and verbs are English. We use them in the English language. So when we start trying to attribute nouns and verbs in other languages, what we're doing is trying to make someone else's language make sense in ours, which is the wrong way to do it. What you need to do if you're going to try to understand another language is divorce yourself from your language and learn that language. You think in that language. You speak in that language. You don't processing everything back and forth and trying to understand something in your first language will absolutely keep you from ever learning a second. So to think of this as a noun indicative of motion is really not the right thing to do. To think of any word in Hebrew as a noun or a verb is really wrong. It only helps you in English, and then it's very misleading. But anyway, the word is to, and it's the idea of turning from here to there. Because there's this motion, it's of the turning of a face towards someone in order to look at them. So he said it to Moshe. So these words are going from God's mouth to Moshe's ears. That's why they have a motion-like pattern to a word that's just T-O. And then it says lemor, which is to say. Now you understand this is a different word. First it's God spoke, and now it's saying. So everything that God spoke was all placed in order. Everything was pre-planned, pre-thought out. God wasn't just talking off the top of his head. But now the signification is to bear forth, hence to shed light. And the way I put it in short is to shed light on the subject. So God pre-thought everything out, put the words in a very specific order, and then he spoke them. And when he spoke them, they brought whatever it was that he put together to light. In other words, they're the reason why you can understand what was on God's mind. So your translation is real simple. You already know. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying. It's real simple. But Kasuto points out something here, that the phrasing of this particular verse indicates a change of topic. We've gotten used to in our attempts to read and understand the biblical text, we've gotten used to the idea of when they write something, you can change subjects 12 times in a 4-letter verse. I have no idea how the Western world has gotten okay with that, because our language is pretty much that way. We can go from subject to subject to subject with nothing to split it up. You know, the mind is just going in every different direction and the words are just following, right? We've gotten so used to that we don't seem to realize they don't do that in the Bible anywhere. They don't even do it in the Christian Bible. Yes, I know the English version of it does exactly that. They take a subject, for instance, Romans chapter 1, which is a subject about idol worship, and right in the middle of a sentence, it suddenly becomes sexual depravity because they don't understand that the subject did not change. They're still talking about idol worship, men and women doing things that are not seemly. Idol worship, men with men, women with women, doing what? Worshiping idols. That whole chapter is about idol worship because the way of writing in both of those languages from that time period, they have certain things that have to happen in their sentence structure to make it change, and there is no change. So we need to understand this because of that very thing, the Puritans wound up making all kinds of laws, and they became very prudish, and that had an effect on the Jewish world, who became very prudish and made those same laws. We affect them, they affect us. It all goes round and round. What are we saying? The art imitating life, and then life imitating art, and round go the wheels on that bus. So we have to understand that in this language, there is something there that tells us when to switch gears. Right now, we are switching gears. Just saying, just thinking out loud here. So now we're going to switch to what gears? Shemot chapter 12. Chapter 30, rather, verse 12. For, and this is very literal English here, for shall bear up head children Yisrael, to number them, and give man covering soul he to Yahweh, in number with them, and not he will be in them plague in number with them. It's really not as bad as it seems, but we begin with for, the word key, rather, the Hebrew word. So that's for or because. So there's going to, because something happened, or for you will do something, right? Tisa, you know that's nasa, and they've changed the noon to a tate, so it's shall. It's a command. We've gone from something that you're going to do in the future to, man, you're going to do it now. Shall bear up. Shall bear up. Because it's asa, it's to take up, to lift up. It's expressing the idea of raising up, right? Because you bear up the ark with the posts, the little poles that go through the little roundy holes that houses the poles, and you pick them up, you bear up the ark and you walk off with it, right? And it's the same way when Noah made the ark, the really big one with all the animals on it. By the way, that whole idea of two and two, two of everything, go back and read your Bible. It's seven. You have clean animals that you have a certain number, and then you have unclean animals that you have a certain number. You ought to look it up. First time I said something about the 7 animals, my mother says, "Oh, Robert, what have you been reading?" I said, "Oh, Mom, I've been reading the Bible." Anyway, so the waters, they came down and they did what? They bore up, they lifted up the ark. So I want you to get the idea here that there's some lifting up, right? This used in all kinds of different ways, as are all Hebrew words, because it's a primitive language. They have few words, lots of meaning. In our language, we have lots of words with very little meaning. Gets people in a lot of trouble. Anyway, so then it's et, and that's a word that has no meaning, but it is a pointer to something. So we're going to lift up what? Rosh. Well, that's the head. That's that thing on right here, the thing I'm pointing at, the thing I'm tapping on. That's your head. But it's also to be the head or the leader, because the leader is the head of the group, right? To be over properly, the head of men and animals. Whatever is highest and supreme is called the head of something. The summit of a mountain is called the head of a mountain. Yeah, you get the idea. So then it says B'nai. So you're going to lift up the head of the children. Okay, you know that you're not going to walk around, grab everybody in the head and lift it up, right? I hope you know that. So obviously, if it's not making sense here, there's probably an idiom going on, right? So this is the children of Yis Yisrael. You're not going to count the people that are Christians, which didn't exist back then. You're not going to count the pagans of any kind. You're going to count the children of Yisrael. Let me say something about the Bible. It's all 100%, even the Christian Bible, every word from cover to cover is about Yisrael and no one else. They are very limited in their scope. So you're going to count the heads of the children of Yisrael. Then it's going to say, Li fekudehem. Literally, that's to number them. Pretty straightforward in English, isn't it? And the explanation of the root word is to strike upon or against any person or thing. In a good sense, is to go to any person or thing, to visit, to inquire of their welfare. So the idea of striking really truly comes from, you take the chisel and the hammer and, okay, here's person number one, bang, bang, bang. There's person number two, bang, bang, bang. And then you get to 4, now we're 5 and go crosswise. Kidding. They didn't do it that way, but they're taking the number, they're writing it down. Of course, there was a time when that's how you wrote. You took your chisel and your hammer and you wrote on a rock. So that's, it's coming from a long time ago, a long ways from here. This has been not new. This from the word that's give, to cause to receive. That's that word that I like to talk about from time to time. So you're going to establish. To give is also to place and to put. If you give somebody the law, what have you done? You've established a law for those people. So that's how it gets into that sort of thing. And then we have the next word is ish. Well, that's man, used more often of husband, but it is of a man, a male human being. And then it's kofer. Believe it or not, that's where you get the word kippah, at least from the root of it anyway. It's a covering, but they use it of a village and a hamlet. How's that a covering? Well, they usually had a fence around them. Anyway, so-called from its being overspread or overlaid, and of course, with what? Pitch. So they're using the villages. They had pitch roofs and things like that, and they had a fence that was a covering. They had a roof over their building that was a covering. It's all the idea of a covering, something that covers. Then this is nafsho. Well, that's from nefesh. That's the soul. So it's soul he. So it's soul. And the soul is the breath of life, and it's to breathe in and out and all that stuff. They got that, but basically, the soul is a part of you that lives on after your body gives up the ghost, if you will, because the ghost is the soul. Anyway, then it says le, or la, Yahweh, which of course is the proper name of God, to Yahweh, be fekod. So there's basically your number, the word for number again. Otam, with them, velo, and not Yeh, not he will be, literally. So it will not be vahem, in them, negef. That's the plague. Be fekod, there's your word for number again, so that it won't be in their number. And this is otam, their number then. So what have we said so far? For you shall count ahead. You will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like counting the heads. You're bearing up the heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a Hebrew idiom. It's you will count. Who are you going to count? The children of Yisrael. To attain their number. That's why you're going to do it. Then the men will give a covering for their soul. So what are they going to do? They're going to make an offering. That's how you give a covering for your soul, by the way. So you're going to give a covering for your soul. You're going to make an offering to Yahweh. From those, not everybody's going to give an offering. The offering is going to come from those who were numbered. And the plague will not be in their number. Okay, so we're going all over the place with this one. Rashi believed that the people were not to be counted, but rather the coins, because it's going to say later that they're giving shekels, and he thought shekels were coins because he didn't know his history at all. Didn't speak Hebrew either, by the way. A little down on Rashi right now. But anyway, he believed that the people were not to be counted. So since these people were supposed to give a half shekel, all you had to do was count the half coins, if they were coins, which they were not. But if you were going to count the coins, then you didn't have to count the people. You follow? Rashbam seems to have believed that the people were to be counted. I really couldn't tell. It was a little muddied up for me. Then Nachmanides felt that the method used here for taking a census should always be the method used. It's not a bad idea if you think about it. I'm not down on Nachmanides, so it's not a bad idea, because it's the only time it ever actually tells you to do it and how to do it. And if there's a little bit of information here, so you think that, well, if God's already told you how to do it, why does he have to tell you how to do it again? So you're always going to have to come back to the source. So Nachmanides is pretty sharp on that. Even Ezra felt that this offering, and thus census, was to be taken once a year to cover the sin of the people. Never mind that there is a sin offering taken once a year for the people. Now we've got another one. So I'm a little down on him today. I want to say another thing, though. You're looking at this verse, and in the end of it, it's saying, they're going to make an offering, and it says from those who were numbered. Then it says, and the plague will not be in their numbers. So you're getting that there's an argument going on here that, well, if these guys are counted, none of them are going to get the plague. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what Kasuda wrote. He said, and I'm quoting, in Mesopotamia, the taking of a census was bound up with a religious ritual of purification. And so much importance was attached to this rite that the entire census was named after it. The word was tebebtu. Of course, it means purification. This was apparently due to the fact that the census was considered a sin, implying, as it were, a lack of faith. And by faith, Kasudo means trust, not the idea of Christian faith today. We're talking, because that'd be your religion is your faith, right? I'm not trying to slam anybody here. I'm just saying that he's talking about trust, implying that it's a lack of trust, and that's why it's a sin. Then it says in the deity, of course. Therefore, it was necessary to associate it, this census, the law of God, if you will, this census, with a ceremony of atonement and cleansing from sin. So basically he's saying the pagans did this, and since they did it, God had to make a law around it, so that he didn't get all mixed up in the pagan. Anyway, as some of you know, Kasudo is one of my all-time favorite scholars. Few other men could even stand in the turbulence of his brilliance. I'll help myself out. Though that statement was meant to be funny, it apparently was funny in my head, and was in fact borrowed from the movie A Knight's Tale, it is not far from the reality of this man's work. He was brilliant. Still, I very much disagree with the idea that God makes laws which are reactionary, or that were meant to avoid any agreement with paganism. Truth is truth, right is right, wrong is wrong. It makes no difference if somebody else happens to be right or wrong. We learn from the Torah that God's law is eternal, which means that his law existed long before paganism was ever a blip on the world screen, or scene rather, not screen. Either way, while there is no question that these Mesopotamian pagan sensibilities did in fact affect the Jewish people at Sinai, God's law was not instituted to appease them. God's law is right. It has always been right. It will always be right. Thus, the idea that the plague would not be found among the Jewish population which had been counted and was therefore a punishment for not counting is a bridge too far for me. Instead, I believe that the meaning of the statement was to be understood as, do not count those who are currently infected with the plague. Most scholars would agree that only those of military fighting age, i.e. 20 years or more, were to be counted, especially since the text is going to say that in about 2 sentences. Thus, I would insert here that the point of the census was in fact to count out the military. And since those who were infected with the plague could not be among the people, they were also not to be among the military. To this day, militaries the world over reject people with certain defects and diseases for military service. It has never changed. Verse 13. This gave they all that pass upon the numbers half the shekel, in shekel the holy, 20 gera, 20th part of the shekel, the shekel, half the shekel offering to Yahweh. Okay. Zeh, which means this. Sometimes it's ha-zeh, the this. In this case, it's just zeh, this. Yit nu, gave they, or he gave they. It's to give, to cause, to receive, to place, to establish. It's all kinds of things like that. Kol, all, that's everything. Nothing was excluded. Ha-over, all that pass. Now remember, they're lifting up the head, all that are being counted. So they're going to say it a different way, but the subject hasn't changed. It changed earlier in verse 11, but we haven't seen another verse like that, so we're still on the same subject of counting people. All right, so those that pass over, cross over a stream, so it's literally to pass over, and this is all which is upon or above. So you pass over something, you are above it. Maybe you're even on it, but you're still above it. I'm just saying. Ha-pekudim, the numbers. So they were told to lift up the head to count them, and now they're saying that they were passed over, all that passed over the numbers, right? It's just a different way of saying the same thing, everybody who was counted. Oops. Then it says ma-ha-zit. Now it says that's half. That's in the middle or half. There's only 2 choices we have here. Ha-shekel, a shekel, a certain weight of gold and silver containing 20 beans. 20 beans. That comes from the Talmud. It's a bunch of baloney. How are you going to get 20 beans that weigh the same amount? They're always going to have to be kidney beans, and somehow 20 kidney beans in this pile is going to be the exact same way as the 20 kidney beans in that pile? Come on now. Anyway, it's a weight, though. It's not a coin. It's a weight. So, we go on Besh shekel. So it's shekel in shekel. And then it's ha-kodesh, the holy, which is going to open up a whole can of worms here. Gera. Now, Gera, we need to know what this is because, wow, does that ever have the wrong information? It's a 20th part. No, it's not. You could say that. 20 Gera equals 1 shekel, right? So you're still talking about a weight. These are not coins. A shekel is the same thing as 20 Gera. So you can think of it as 10 pennies is the same thing as a dime, right? But these are weights, so you'd have to think of them not as coins. Maybe there's 10 little pebbles that give you a certain weight. You call that a shekel, right? So whatever the silver is over here, if you get a balance between that and 20 of these, now you know that you have an actual shekel because these are the weight of the Gera. I hope you understand it's not a coin, not back in this time. Then it says ha-shekel. So it's telling you that the shekel is equal to 20, the same weight as 20 Gera. I don't know how else to say it. I feel like I'm stumbling all over everything today. Then it's machazit. There's your word for half or middle, so it's half. Ha-shekel, so half the shekel. 10 gera is what they're talking about. Then it says terumah. This is an offering. It's the an oblation, an offering gift, especially used as a gift that was brought to the temple to the priest. A heave offering. Okay, we'll just have to leave it at that. This is La Yahweh, to Yahweh, to God. So our translation is, all who pass over the number will give 1/2 of the shekel. So they're going to give something that is equal to 10 geraot in weight. Goes on and says, with the shekel of course, it literally says the holy, so that's the sanctuary, the shekel of the sanctuary. Then there's 2 sentences here that are clobbered together in English, so you have 2 here. The next sentence is 20 gerah, that's 20 of those equals 1 shekel, right? 20 gerah is 1/2 of a shekel. This is how we know that it's what a half shekel is. It's 10 gerah in weight. It is the shekel offering to Yahweh. We now know, without any doubt, that the offering of 10 geraot, an offering that's equal to that, which is equal to 1/2 of the weight of a shekel, is called the shekel offering. So from now on, when you read about the shekel offering, you know that it's a 1/2 shekel. It's 10 geraot, or geraim. I really wasn't sure about that, the plural on that, because the word is feminine. So shouldn't it be geraot? But shekel, when you put that in plural, is shekelim. I don't know. Anyway, it is quite possible that since an offering is given for a newborn son, think about this, there is also an offering given when that son reaches fighting age. I don't know why not, but it doesn't specifically say that. Of the words all who pass, Rashi, who wrote that the coins should be counted in verse 12, remember he said the coins should be counted instead of the people. Now of this verse he writes that the people had to be counted, as if it's a different subject. He also believed that God showed Moshe a coin that should be made and used for this event. This is why I'm so down on him today. He obviously did not know that coins didn't exist in the time of Moshe. Pseudo pointed out that shekel was a weight, not a coin. He also pointed out that coins did not exist until 700 BCE, and further, the Jews didn't use coinage until after Babylon. You're getting really close to the 1st century before they were using coinage. I'm just saying. There is some talk about the shekelim used in temple service weighing more than the normal shekel, because that's what they did to this. They turned it, because it said the temple shekelim. So now all of a sudden they weigh something, they're a different weight than the other shekelim, right? But the evidence that they give to prove this is from Ezekiel 45:12, which clearly states that a shekel equals 20 gerah. So there's no difference in the weights. This is tradition and not reality. Just have to leave it at that. Verse 14, all that pass upon the numbers from son 20 year, there's your 20-year-old thing, and above, he give offering Yahweh. So they've been counted, and now he's saying they're being told that they have to be 20 years old or older. That's what it really boils down to. Because it's kol, which is all in totality. So you don't get out, you're 20 years old, you've been counted, you don't get out because you're prettier than the other guy, or your parents are rich and they can put you in the Coast Guard instead of the regular service. Nope. Ain't gonna happen back then. This is ha'over. Well, then we've had that word. That's the passing over, like passing over a stream. And then it says all, which is upon. So if you go over something, you are above it, maybe even on it. Just the way Hebrews talk. Don't worry about it. Ha pekudim. So there's the numbers. All who passed over the numbers. Mi ben. That's from the sons. It's really the word for children, but we know it's the boys being counted here, not the women. We've already been told. Esrim. That's the word for 20. Shana. That's the word for year. So all that are above 20 years old. 20 or above, I should say. Then it says va malah, and above. So 20 and above. I knew that. Then it says yiten. That's the person who's going to give. That's going to cause somebody to receive terumat, the offering. And then it says Yahweh. So now we know who the somebody is. So your translation is all who pass over the numbers or on the numbers or above the numbers. It doesn't really matter how you say that. All who pass on the numbers must be 20 years old and above. They will give the offering. That's the shekel offering, if you recall, to Yahweh. Of the words 20 years and above, Rashi wrote, based on these words, 20 years old and above, those words, that Rashi wrote that no one should be considered a man until the age of 20. Okie dokie then. Haskuni and the Babylonian Talmud, by the way, in Shabbat 89b, both agree that God does not punish men under 20. And thus, no atonement offering was needed by the younger man. Or men. So obviously, there's a belief here that they're still tying it to Mesopotamia, and God's making laws in order not to get confused with somebody else's laws. Oh, I'm sorry, but that's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. God's law is eternal. It's been here since way before any of this was here. It was here before before Mesopotamia was here. His law is not made for those reasons. Anyway, Kasuda pointed out that in the Mari document, only the men who were 20 and above were counted in a census. I want to say something about this. I really have this belief, and it's not based on, so-and-so book, so-and-so chapter, so-and-so verse. I can't say book, chapter, and verse says this. But just from my understanding of all these years of studying Torah, in academia and out, mastering all of these languages and doing everything that I've done, I have a theory, and I'm only going to present it as a theory. But I have this theory that when God created mankind, he didn't create man, he created mankind. And for those of you who don't understand the difference, because either way you say that, he didn't create Adam, he created Adam. Right? That's the way that, if I'd said that in Hebrew, that's the way that would have came out. Would have came? Anyway, that's just sounded weird to me. If you want to understand what I mean by that, the message, what was that called? Mashal Hashabot. Go look at that one. That'll help you understand it. But I believe that when God created mankind, mankind knew everything. Because when God said it is good, the word was told. And the word told used to mean perfect. Man was created perfect. How can you be created perfect if you don't know the law? So I think that when man was first created, the law was in them. They knew what the law was. And as time went on and man began to mix the clean with the unclean, they began to break away from God. They began to break away from all that was right and pure about what God had created. And that was a choice that we all had from the beginning, right? We can choose to follow God or we can choose not to. And of those who chose not to, in the early days, when they began to develop their new little religions, their new little paganism, I think that a lot of that is a result of what they knew when man began. It's just a theory. It's a theory. All right. Verse 15. The rich not he make great, and the poor not he make small. From half the shekel to give, offering Yahweh to cover upon souls. You probably already got this one, right? He'ashir, the rich. And in this case, we're talking about rich people, right? We're talking about people that have more money than sense, you know? People that just have a lot of money, right? Because rich is all kinds of things. Wealth in this world, in the Bible world, generally meant more about, it had more to do with kids than anything. If a man had a wife and say 10 kids, he was considered very wealthy, particularly when compared to a man who had a wife and 1 kid, right? Because for several reasons, because your children were your wealth more than anything. But if you could afford that many children, if you could feed that many children, you must have a lot of money, dude. Just say it. But anyway, there's a lot of that from the idea of wealth and riches and all that really comes from that. But it also, in this particular word, it's in a good sense, it's honorable to be noble. In a bad sense, it's someone who's haughty and impious and thinks a lot of themselves. And we have all of those ideas in our word for rich as well. But we're really talking about a rich person. So a rich person, lo, he will not, that's the negative article, Rebe. He will not make Rebe, Rabbi, you hear it? Rav. That's great. He will not increase. He will not make numerous. He will not make great. Vehadal, and the poor, that's the guy with the 1 kid. Just kidding. Not so much. Lo ya me'it. He will not make it small. Make it few. He will not diminish. So what's the one guy? What's the rich guy not going to make great? What's the poor guy not going to make small? Mi machatzit. Well, that's it's from half. That's the word for half and middle, but they've added something to the beginning of it, so it sounds like a different word, but it's the same word. From half, ha shekel. In other words, it's half a shekel. No one gives more, no one gives less. Then it says, la tet, to give. So they are not going to give more or less than that shekel. This is et te rumat, and that's the offering, Yahweh. So God's offering, le haper, that's the covering, al, which is upon, nafshotechem, so that's the covering of his soul. It's not covering his soul because it's a sin offering. It's covering his soul because it is an offering. All right, so the rich are not to give more, and the poor are not to give less than half a shekel when they give their gift to Yahweh to make a covering for their souls. Which covering for their souls is really just an idiom for when they give their gift. Of the words rich and poor, even Ezra wrote that this law was given because all men are equal in the eyes of God. I personally don't buy into that. I mean, I believe that all men are equal in the eyes of God. I don't doubt that part. But I don't agree with what he's saying here. He's saying that God made this law because of that. Well, we don't know why God made this law, because he doesn't say, because this is why I made this law. You know, God rarely does that. He does it from time to time, but it's rare. He didn't do it here. So we really can't go there except just to be speculatory. Kasuda wrote, even in the generation of the wilderness, there could be found differences of wealth. Well, again, this is pure conjecture, but it is based on the idea that when the Egyptians gave the Jews all their wealth, some Egyptians had more to give than others. Thus, some Jews received more than others. And there's the whole argument in the Talmud about, well, you know, the princes of Yisrael Rael received more than the others because they were the princes, after all. They were the heads of the tribe, so they received more. Really? You think the Egyptians gave a flip? I'm just, anyway. It's more about some had more, some had less. But what good is wealth when there is no place to spend it? How could you be richer than this guy or poorer than that guy when neither one of you had a store to go spend your money? While there is no doubt that some Jews did in fact receive more wealth than others, this is in no way the reason for this law. If I was to take a guess, the reason for this law is because it's eternal. There will always be some Jews who are able to give more. But God set the price of the shekel offering at 10 geraot, or geraim, I have no idea. That's 1/2 a shekel. That I do know. Do not give more, do not give less. Give what God asked. However, this does not mean that rich men should never give more than the poor. It just means that this particular offering is what it is, 1/2 of a shekel. For those who have confused this offering with the offering given in Nehemiah 10:32, and trust me, there are a lot who have, Pseudo pointed out that the Nehemiah offering was an annual offering and was in no way connected to a census. All right, verse 16. And to take you silver the covering from children Yisrael, and give you with heat upon service tent appointed times, and be to children Yisrael to remembrance to faces Yahweh, to cover upon soldier. So starts off Bela Kakta, literally, and to take you. So you take, you're going to reach out and grab something and take it to yourself, right? They use this of men taking a woman. And to take a woman in their day, there was a price paid for that. I mean, actual money had to be paid for that. You didn't just grab a woman and say, oh, she'll do. Walk off with someone's daughter. No, it didn't work that way. But to take a woman was to marry a woman. That's what they meant by that. It was the idea of if you took a wife, then you two became one. It was really the word for glue, because the two of you became one person. Then this is et kesef. That's silver. It's just the word for silver. So they use it for money and they use it for coinage, but it's really just the word for silver. And this is ha kippurim. Kippah, kippurim. So it's lots of kippahs. Well, so they're going to translate that to redemptions and atonements, but it's covering. Then it says me'et, that's from B'nai, from the children. What children? Yisrael, from the children of Israel. Venatata, and give you. And so now you're going to take it from them and you're going to give it to, this is Robin Hood. Take it from the poor. Oh, no, they're not poor. They've got all those riches. Take it from the rich and give it to the richer. Wait, that's not the right way to look at that, is it? But you're going to take it from them and give it to God, obviously. Oto, with it, all upon. Avodat. So it's not going to God. It's going to the service. Avodat, that's Eved, servant, avodat, service. It's for the service, ohel, the service of the tent. Oh, like when you celebrate something in your synagogue and you show up and there's all this food there and there's tables with tablecloths there. That comes from the service of the tent. Moed, so this is the tent of the appointed time. So this particular offering is supposed to go for that very specific thing. The haya, and it will be libnei, that's to the children. Yisrael, it'll be to the children of Israel, or Israel, le zikaron, a memorial. a remembrance. Lipne, that's two faces. That's before. Now it gives God's proper name, Yahweh. So it's a memorial before the face of God or in the presence of God. Then it says lechaper. There's your word for cover. They keep the whole idea of taking your talit and throwing it over your head, the covering up of something, the pitch on a house, the fence around a village, those things. All which is upon nafshotehem, upon their souls, nefesh being the word for soul, the part that lives on after you die. But we also use that there were 30 souls on board when it went down, right? Because you're counting the people, and they call them souls. That comes from the Bible. That's the way they use that word. All right, so verse 16 translates out, and you accept silver for the covering from the children of Yisrael and establish it for the service of the tent of appointed times. That's the tabernacle. And it will be for a memorial from the children of Yisrael in the presence of Yahweh to make a covering for your souls. A covering for your souls. Remember, that's idiomatic. It's an offering. Pseudo pointed out that the offering was for the making of the tabernacle, and he also compared this verse to Exodus 37:25, which is saying the same thing. All right, so now we are at the beginning of another topic change. You know how I know? Because it says, very literally, and he spoke Yahweh to Moshe to say. Does that sound familiar? So here we're going to shift gears again. That doesn't mean that the whole subject has to be utterly different. It can still be the same thing, but these are like bullet points because the subject really hasn't changed, has it? But the topic is, these are the little bullet points, connected to the subject, if you will. So and Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying, so we're changing now from what we just talked about, the offering of the half shekel, and now we're talking about the laver. Is that the right way to say that? Laver? Laver, we don't know. Kasuda wrote the following. Do you think it's laver or laver? Laver, okay. The laver is spoken of here alone and not above, because it was not only not part of the furniture of the divine dwelling, but it was placed outside the tent in the court. And even in the court, it was not used for the holy ministration proper, but in preparation for it. He's having to give you an excuse or a reason why it wasn't mentioned with the other things. We've already had this problem because everybody hair gets set on fire. Oh my God, it's out of place. Somebody wrote it where it didn't go. The truth is, they did write it where it goes, because there's two things in Hebrew that we need to know. One, they don't have chronological order. In the Bible, it just simply did not exist in Judaism. In the biblical text, it didn't even exist in the New Testament stuff. It just isn't there because it wasn't in Judaism in those time periods. So you have to let that go. Well, they do things by association. And we're seeing this very thing. Even though chronological order has nothing really to do with it, you see that these things that belong in the tabernacle are spoken of at a different time. Why? Because now it's being added in because of its association to this particular bullet point, if you will. That's how it works. It's supposed to be here. It's not supposed to be elsewhere because the association would be wrong. So it's not an excuse that Kasuto just gave. It's the actual reason. All right, so verse 18. We have time. And do you pot brass and pedestal brass to wash and give you with it between tent appointed times and between the altar, and give you their waters. Pretty straightforward. Ve'asita, to labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. So we're back in make it mode. Never really got out of make it mode, but we're going to make something. Then it's kiyor, which is a pot. That's the laver, by the way. And I feel like you guys are probably hearing me think I'm saying labor. No, laver. This is a burr coming out. If I make my face do funny things. It's a small hearth, they say, a fire pan, so called from boiling or roasting, a basin, a scaffold. I have no idea why it says that. But it's a pot. Then it says nechoshet. So it's either brass or copper. I have no idea, because everywhere I look, the meaning of the word is first it's brass, then it's copper. Well, isn't brass made of copper and something else? And copper is made of copper? So I don't know what to tell you. But it's made of something like that. Then it says vechano, and that's a pedestal. It's a base. So you're going to make a bowl that sits on a base. So they're going to need to be fitted, aren't they? They're going to need to, because if you make your pedestal this big and your bowl this big, it isn't going to sit on it, right? If you make your bowl this big and your pedestal this big, it might not stay there. Might get a little too off kilter and fall over, right? So you need to make it fitted. I'm just saying that's just common sense. Let's just add a little bit here if we can. So you make the pedestal. Then it says nechoshet. So you're going to make it out of the same material. Then it says le rachza. So it's for the purpose of washing. So obviously, you know, there's going to be water in it. Then it says venatata, and you will give. What you going to give? Oto, you're going to give with it. So you're going to give with it. Remember, give was to put, to set, to place, to establish. So what he's really saying is you're going to put it somewhere. You're going to set it somewhere. Where are you going to set it? Bain ohel, so it's between the tent. Remember, ohel is the tent. Moed, the tent of appointed times. Uvain, and between, because we would just say between here and there, but they say between here and between there, right? Ha mis be'ach. So you're going to put it between the tent and you're going to put it between the altar. In other words, the way we say it is you're going to put it between the tent and the altar. Then it says ve'natata, so it's either going to give something, place it in somebody's hand, or you're going to set something, establish something, right? Then it says shama, so in other words, you're going to place it there, not over there, but over there. It's that sound alike word. What are you going to place there? The water. So it says, and you make a pot of brass. I went with brass. And its pedestal of brass for washing. And you place it between the tent of appointed times and the altar, and place the water there in the bowl. Just thought I'd add that. Of the word laver, or pot of brass, haskuni, haskuni. That's Haskanazi, Askenazim, Askenazi. It's, at least I think it's the same word. It's like this. It has something to do with Jews from Spain, I think. Go look it up. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, Haskani wrote that the pot or the laver was not mentioned among the tabernacle items because it was only used to prepare the priests for service. And this may well be right. It's still conjecture, because unless God says this is why I'm doing this, you can't really know for sure that why God's doing this. So for those who say, well, we can eat pork now because we know why God didn't want them to eat pork, because we've discovered that if it's not cooked all the way through, it can kill us, right? So now that we know that, we cook it all the way through, that makes it okay. No. God never said until you figure out what's dangerous about it. He didn't say that. He didn't say this is why I'm doing it. He only said that you couldn't do it. And God's word never changes. Because it is what it is now. It was before the beginning of time and will be after the end of time. because it's eternal. It is way beyond time. It's outside of time. It will never change. So if he said don't eat it, you don't eat it, right? So we got to keep these things in mind. We start thinking that we know why God did something. And sometimes, I think Casuto's right with the previous one, but maybe he's not. Casuto wrote, the word kiyor, or labor, is from the stem kor, which means round. And it's base of bronze, he says, that is, a pedestal shaped like a hollow circle, resting on legs. Where did you see that in the text? Into which the rim of the laver would mold fit. Now that I agree with. And which would carry the entire weight of the laver. I would agree with that. What good's it going to do if it won't carry the weight? His words are based entirely on tradition, as there is no detailed description given from this time period. I believe that no detail given means that God wanted it done the artisan's way. If God wanted it on legs and a roundy fitted thing, God would have said, put it on legs and a roundy fitted thing. But he didn't. He just said that there should be 2 pieces at minimum. Wouldn't be any reason why he couldn't go with 3, but there are 2, unless you want to just stay with 2 since God gave you the order for 2. I'm just saying. Whether it has legs or not, God didn't say. The artisan was more than welcome to do that. And I think that was purposeful because God wanted it to be from our creation. He wanted us to come up with it, not him. Because if it had been that important, he would have told us. That's what I believe. Of the words for washing, Onkelos, Nachmanides, and the Babylonian Talmud in Zavahim 21b, which means seed, they all understand washing to mean sanctifying. Of the words altar, speaking of the burnt offerings, even Ezra wrote that the laver was placed outside the tent so the Kohanim would wash before entering the tent, which he's right about because the law actually eventually will tell you they have to wash their hands before they go in. Rashi and even Ezra believed that this altar was a little south and faced the open area between the altar and the tent of appointed times. I have to agree since the text actually says that. I wouldn't disagree at all. Well, that's as far as we can get today. We have utterly run out of time. So we will see you next time. Same place, same time, and all that. Shalom, shalom.